The Baltimore Ravens extend a key contributor on both the offensive side of the ball and on special teams. We talk about that, the latest news for the Ravens entering a must-win game, and so much more coming up next on this impromptu instant reaction live edition of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on this Friday on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, part of your afternoon, and your first listen each and every day. Are free and available for you all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and audio form wherever you get your shows. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by PrizePicks. And for PrizePicks, they have a lot going for you there. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Definitely more of an impromptu stream here, 2:30 about. A little bit after that, I had some technical difficulties hopping on with the mic, but we got them all solved. The Ravens announced an extension with a player. I think this is the first time in a while, really since Project Washington, that we have seen this like typical Ravens extension for a player. This isn't a first-time extension. This is Justice Hill's third contract with the team. Spoiler, that's who it is. But we haven't really seen one of these since Project Washington, those cheaper deals that favor the Ravens, and really it's a fair deal for both the Ravens and the player. And so we saw that with guys like Nick Boyle, Patrick Ricard, Tavon Young. The list goes on and on with that, but it's been a while. So really excited for Justice Hill. We'll talk about kind of what it means for the team, what it means for the outlook of the Ravens running back position moving forward, because I know there's a lot of conversation about, well, they just paid Derrick Henry, so why would you go out there and pay Justice Hill? We're going to talk about that. And then we'll also dive into some of the biggest story points, biggest storylines for the weekend for this Ravens team. We got some quotes to dive into. We'll dive into the Dallas game, which is most definitely a must-win for this squad. So appreciate everybody for being here. Just hit 8,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is obviously where these live shows start out, where we go live. So be sure to subscribe, turn notifications on as well. Really appreciate the video community, but the shows do come out, obviously available for playback in video form, but in audio form as well. We put those live shows up there. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Dre, appreciate you, man. What's up? Hope your Friday is going well. Timothy, what's going on, man? Started work with Locked On Ravens, ended work with Locked On Ravens. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we're going to talk about everything. We're going to talk about what the Ravens have in Justice Hill, and we'll obviously get to more comments as well. Don't worry. But I just want to start off with the big news. And actually, if you've been tuning in with us, we've been starting the use of graphics on the YouTube side, which I think has been really cool. So I love doing it. Sometimes I'll have more graphics than others, but hey, look at this graphic right here. The Ravens, Justice Hill, 2-year, $6 million extension for Justice Hill. So this is what I'm talking about. Those cheaper contracts, both average annual value-wise and total money-wise, that benefit both the Ravens and the player. This is a bargain deal for Justice Hill, someone who can step in as a third down back type of player and obviously has the special teams value as well to them. We know he can play in multiple aspects, is a special teamer, both as a gunner, as a return guy. So Justice Hill is a player that, for the Ravens, this is a no harm, no foul deal, in my opinion. Now, $3 million per year for a running back, I get, look, we had this entire conversation with Derrick Henry, where it's like, well, why would you pay Derrick Henry all this money, running backs and paying running backs? Why do you pay running backs? We see all these stats about paying running backs, and it's not like Justice Hill is going out there and being the everyday player for the Ravens in that big moment, right? But I still think, look, you look beyond 2024 for this Ravens team, and Derrick Henry could very well just be on a 1-year deal. It was a 2-year deal technically, but they can get out of it after 1 year if they really, really want to. And then you can kind of reevaluate the position from there. Keaton Mitchell will obviously play more of a factor next season once he comes back. I don't expect too much from Keaton this season. I think he'll have some level of an impact, but I think his impact will come next year, at least the big one. So it's really going to be Keaton and Justice Hill. And then do you draft a running back if Derrick Henry doesn't come back? Do you keep Derrick Henry for one more season? There is more uncertainty in that running back room, at least pre-Justice Hill extension, than I think a lot of people realized. But now you really have to figure out, is it Derrick Henry or not for what it is? And so, yeah, and Clay, they're 100% on that Ben Cleveland one. If you tuned in to today's show, by the way, be sure to do that. Sam and Njoku and I talked about Todd Monken hinting at potentially an unusual offensive line solution. That Ben Cleveland quote, there was pretty much no way. I mean, I could have maybe made it a couple sizes bigger, but the font on those graphics, yes, usually they are a lot bigger, but that graphic had so many words in it that I had to do it. So I read over it, but yeah, that Cleveland graphic was very small. I think text was very small on that. But for Justice Hill, he's a player that is actually the only remaining player from that 2019 draft class. So actually, speaking of graphics, I'm going to make a graphic maybe to pull up on tomorrow's show just because I was moving a million miles a minute. Couldn't do it for this live one, but probably will bring it up on tomorrow's show about the Ravens 2019 draft class. And while we're at it, let's do some quick research on this live. Let's go Ravens 2019 draft class. Here we go. Ravens 2019 draft class. We have Marquise Brown in the first round. Jalen Ferguson, rest in peace, in the third round. Miles Boykin in the third round. Justice Hill in the fourth round. Ben Powers in the fourth round. Iman Marshall in the fourth round. Dalen Mack in the fifth round. And Trace McSorley in the sixth round. That is the entire draft class. So obviously Marquise Brown was a good player while he was in Baltimore, but just didn't work out. Jalen Ferguson was showing some flashes here and there before his really, unfortunate passing and that whole tragic situation. Boykin didn't amount to anything. Powers had, one good year, turning into a big contract in Denver. Iman Marshall, some people are still wondering if he's a real person. Dalen Mack got cut after, I think, his first year, maybe his second year. I can't really remember that. And Trace McSorley, obviously Ravens legend. But, yeah, not a great draft. And it's not like Justice Hill is this all-pro running back either. But out of everybody, I think Marquise Brown was the best player in that class. But Justice Hill, I think, has been, the most consistent player. And obviously, since Marquise Brown is no longer a member of the Ravens. But Hill, over the course of his career, I mean, look, there was a time in 2021 where not a lot of people thought that Justice Hill was going to be a member of this team. I think there were some reports that he was cut from the team. He didn't start off well. I mean, in pass protection, he really struggled. He's turned into an incredible pass protector, can come in there. Look, I mean, he blocked Chris Jones. He's essentially the Ravens' sixth offensive lineman out there with the way he blocked Chris Jones on those couple of plays. But he's been a fine player for them. And I'm not going to sit up here and be all angry about them giving him $3 million per season. If they had given him $5 million per season or $6 million per year, then we could have had a different conversation. But at $6 million total, the Ravens can't give out too many of these contracts anymore. We can't kind of be in that era for Baltimore of them giving out, here's a 2-year, $6 million deal here. Here's a 3-year, $18 million deal there. That's not, That can't happen as much because Lamar's on that big deal. You just signed Nnamdi Madubuike. You have Roquan on his big deal. And obviously as big deals expire, other ones will take their place, and it's a cycle. But then you also have to look at, well, what about Kyle Hamilton? What's that deal going to look like? What about Linderbaum? What's that deal going to look like? If they extend Zay, what's that deal going to look like? And that is further down the line, right? I'm not saying that's a today issue for the Ravens, but with their contract and cap situation, while they used to have on Lamar's rookie deal, Flacco wasn't on this $200+ million deal. You could sign a lot of guys to those smaller team-friendly deals that added up. You can't have as many add up to as big of a sum anymore. So the Ravens obviously feel like it's a big thing to try to get Justice Hill under contract here. And quickly, I will look up Justice Hill stats. Over the course of his career, again, nothing too crazy. 208 carries, just under 1,000 yards, 959 to be exact. That's 4.6 yards per carry, which is not bad at all. Had his best year last season, 84 attempts, 387 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But he has this shiftiness to him. he has a unique blend of size and power and speed. Well, I guess maybe not so much the size. We're not talking a Derrick Henry type of player, but the speed and the physicality, very underrated physical player. So we're going to see. But at the end of the day, I'm not mad about this deal. I think it's a fine deal for the Ravens, and it's something where, again, you get a good player, not this all-pro guy, but a good player on a bargain of a deal. So, again, I'm not going to sit here and complain about that. I think for the Ravens, they did get a good deal here. And for Justice Hill, hey, you know what? He got rewarded for it. He actually ended up talking a lot about it, and, again, didn't have the time to make a graphic for this before the show, but I'm going to pull up the quote quickly here. He ended up saying that, he's a Raven. He's meant to be a Raven. I thought I bookmarked. We're going to have bookmark thing again. Here we go. So it's a great feeling to sign a third contract with the Ravens. Said it was a surprise. This is a shout out to Jess Rebeck for this. Quote, I just come to work every single day. I wasn't paying much attention to the contract. I'm a Raven man. This is where I want to be. Grass isn't always greener on the other side. So if you remember, Patrick Queen kind of had the watering the grass, sipping the wine, saying the grass is greener. Well, guess what? Marlon Humphrey said it. Justice Hill has said it. A lot of other players have said it too. The grass isn't always greener on the other side here. So Justice Hill, 2 years, $6 million extension coming up. We still have a lot to get to on this bonus instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. We'll talk about the latest news entering the weekend, including what we're going to dive more into on our bonus episode tomorrow. Hint, hint, it's the offensive line. Stay tuned. A lot to get to on this instant reaction bonus edition of Locked On Ravens. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. First, the show is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, and I love going on FanDuel, seeing all that they have to offer. We have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. They get a 3-week free trial of FanDuel Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon on a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel anytime. So for the Ravens and Cowboys game in week 3, pretty big matchup already. The Ravens open up as 1.5-point favorites against Dallas. So if you like that line, head over to FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com. Download America's #1 sportsbook. We are back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Purple Friday live, breaking down Justice Hill's 2-year extension with the Ravens and just diving into some just overall Ravens news and content as we get closer and closer to the Ravens 425 kickoff with the Dallas Cowboys in week 3. Appreciate everybody for being here and making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to, again, subscribe on YouTube, follow along in audio form. If you're an everydayer, really appreciate you checking in each and every day. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. Hopefully you stay a while. We bring you 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage, plus more. Again, we'll have a bonus episode tomorrow talking more about potential shifts on the Ravens offensive line that John Harbaugh hinted at. We will also be diving into a game day episode. We now have game day episodes, 6 a.m. on game days on Sundays, getting you ready for the game. So if you're getting up, getting ready for the game, if you're waiting for the game, be sure to check out our game day episodes. And then we'll obviously be live after the games as well. Well, we certainly got a shift in what John Harbaugh had to say about the offensive line today. He had some very interesting and almost kind of juicy comments about the line. Again, we'll dive more into those on the bonus episode, but I will give a little bit of a hint to it right here if this graphic will upload for me. And again, this will be the main point for tomorrow's episode. Here we go. I think our offensive line is going to play great. You have to believe that and feel that way. You probably will see some different guys in spots. So that was John Harbaugh about the Ravens offensive line. There were more to those comments, but that's just the skinny of it, where there's been a lot of harsh criticism on this offensive line. And look, I don't blame anybody for having it. I don't. And I see Jeff saying, no comment this every day until they do it. Bench Falele. That is the pulse of the fan base. Should be the pulse of the team right now. We've heard former players say that they should put in Roger Rosengarten, put in Ben Cleveland. Current players say it as well. It's this overlying theme. And then you hear John Harbaugh come out, and we'll pull up the graphic that he had to say about this line. If I can find it here, I'm not sure if I can actually. I don't think I have it here, but essentially John Harbaugh expressed confidence saying that, he's seen progress out of those guys. And, it's tough when you go out there and you have all of these younger guys. Well, look, this is a team that's 0-2. You can't be experimenting. And that's actually exactly what Chris Long said. He's had multiple different just viewpoints on this Ravens team over the last couple of days. He's been over the moon impressed with Roger Rosengarten, said that, offensive line rotations can end up hurting, which I 100% agree with. Like, the offensive line rotation, there are two different schools of thought with this. And this is for the right tackle position in general, for obviously what the Ravens are rotating with McCary and with Rosengarten. But it can throw off timing on a defensive line. You time up an offensive lineman. And so, for example, if for Max Crosby, it seemed like he had Patrick McCary pretty timed up, you throw in Roger Rosengarten, it can throw off the timing for defenders. But it can also, one, send the wrong message, and two, hurt you in the long run because you're not putting your best five out there, which is what John Harbaugh said they were doing. And then, well, it's factually false because you're putting out six guys. One of those guys is better than the other guy. So that is just a factually false statement there. For the Ravens, I think you have to move off of Daniel Faalele. He's not a natural guard. This is an 0-2 team, and you're like experimenting here. You can't do that. So that's the biggest news entering the weekend. And man, it's crazy. Where again, and I see Dre saying the Justice Hill block against Chris Jones got him this deal. They might as well be throwing Chris Jones, and Justice Hill in there all the time. Is you kind of look at what happens for this team. They need consistency there. As I've said multiple times on the show, I am overly worried for Lamar Jackson and his health if this continues. It's not about Lamar. It's about, he's getting hit all the time. That Max Crosby stunt, he got thrown up in the air. Max Crosby put him in the air and slammed him down to the ground. You can't take hits like that. No quarterback can take hits like that. I don't care who you are. So this offensive line is such a big thing. And Clay saying Justice Hill for right guard, exactly. Blocked Chris Jones better than Faalele did. So it is, it's crazy. And Clay, I feel like we're all getting tired of saying the same exact thing week in and week out. It's every fan, professionals, how can the coaches not see it? The coaches obviously can only say certain things. So, Harbaugh, well, let me say this. I would say that, Harbaugh wouldn't come out there and just blast the guy. And then we saw what happened with Ben Cleveland. So I'm not going to say that anymore because we saw it. But I do think this is kind of like a Ben Cleveland. John Harbaugh's not a fan. I don't think John Harbaugh is a fan of Ben Cleveland. Obviously, he said he loves Ben and this, that, and the other. But okay, we'll throw up the infamous Ben Cleveland graphic, which the text size is like a size 0.03 here. So I'll read it off again. It's very hard to read. Look at how small that text is. There weren't a whole lot of right guard reps taken by me during camp just because of injury and all the above. So just staying ready for my number gets called to go in and play. This is, again, Ben Cleveland responding to John Harbaugh's comments. This is via the Baltimore Sun. Quote, I feel like I've been my most consistent and most proactive throughout camp. It's been a struggle having to move around positions with injuries and stuff like that. But as far as adapting to other positions and just playing where I'm asked, I feel like I've been extremely consistent and competitive. So I feel like, I had to get into the screen to kind of read that a little bit because that text size is so small. But it's crazy because the comments that John Harbaugh was referring to here, the comments that John Harbaugh made on Ben Cleveland, if Ben had earned the job to be the starting right guard, you look at the tape, he didn't beat out Daniel. Ben knows what he needs to do if he wants playing time. Our evaluation right now is that Daniel outplayed Ben. Just facts, straight up. The just facts straight up is that, look, maybe they felt that way in training camp and, whatever at that point. But this is about not only game day adjustments, but it's about just game year, season-long adjustments. If you can't adjust to this, if you can't see this, if you can't see that Daniel Faalele is clearly outmatched at the guard position, I don't really know what to say. Is John Harbaugh willing to risk his career as the Ravens head coach over this? I've kind of been thinking about this over the last couple of days, honestly. But I think it's really unfortunate the way this is playing out for John Harbaugh. And look, the criticism is rightly deserved, but I feel like this is going to be the lasting image of John Harbaugh if it continues to spiral this way. I feel like this is going to be it where Harbaugh has had, if we just take out, some of this stuff, and I know you gotta look at this from a bird's eye view and you can't take out any one aspect. I think that'd be unfair. But Harbaugh led this team to a Super Bowl. He was so consistent early in his career as Ravens head coach. But we have to admit that, since the Lamar tenure started here, the fourth quarter execution hasn't been good enough. The late blown leads have not been good enough. And, it's the mismanagement of the game. And we can talk about play calling with Greg Roman. We can talk about play calling with Todd Monken. We can talk about this, that, and the other. But factually, if you want to talk about just facts, it all falls back on the head coach, right? That's the guy. That's the guy who it all falls back on. So for Harbaugh, I would love for him if this is, and again, we're speaking very, very early, right? But if this is it for John Harbaugh and everything that it is, it would be unfortunate to remember his Ravens tenure as this guy that couldn't manage games and kind of was this, the Ravens were a train wreck down the stretch or whatever, and they couldn't get the job done down the stretch. There's a lot more to that in John Harbaugh's tenure and career, but right now it's the stubbornness and it's the comments and it's the mismanagement, and that's everything we're seeing right now in plain sight and view. So I think that, with John Harbaugh saying that, you might see some different guys at different spots. I really do hope that is the case. And look, I hear you, Brandon. Brandon's saying if we go 0-3, I'm fully in the fire Harbaugh train because it'll be too late to recover from that. I'll read the stats off again. For 0-2 teams since the NFL expanded their season from 17 weeks to 18 weeks, there have been 32 teams that have started 0-2. Only 2 of those teams have made the playoffs. That is the 2022 Cincinnati Bengals and 2023 Houston Texans. Now, I don't have the stats for 0-3. I will try to look that up before tomorrow's bonus episode so I can have that handy for everybody. And for myself, I want to know. But I wouldn't be shocked if there's not a team that started 0-3 that didn't make the playoffs. I'm not exactly sure. But as far as the 0-2, that's a serious thing. You got to recover pretty substantially from that. 0-3, you're in a tough spot. And I'm not sure that the Ravens, they have talent, but any team would be tough to recover from 0-3. So this is a must-win game for the Ravens. And look at this, Jeff. I don't even have to do the research. Jeff, right here for me. Really appreciate you, Jeff. 0-3 is 1 in 129. That's all time, correct, Jeff? I see he saw it on ESPN. Appreciate you. So 0-3 teams, 1 in 129. I believe that's all time in terms of not making the playoffs. So only one team in 129, according to Jeff here, has made the playoffs after starting 0-3. Not great. Not great. That's a less than 1% chance that you make the playoffs. Very far below. So this is a must-win game for the Ravens, obviously. And coming up in the final part of the show, we are going to be diving into a bit of that Ravens and Cowboys Week 3 preview. We'll be talking about this throughout the weekend as well, but just talking about what needs to be done, how the Ravens can bounce back, and a lot more. So stay tuned. A lot to come in our final segment of this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks. And PrizePicks, there is so much that they have to offer. And for me, I love going on PrizePicks and seeing everything that they have. But PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. And PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. So one Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. And PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my pick hits, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. So for the Ravens and Cowboys game this weekend, if you like more on the Zay Flowers receiving yards, more on maybe even Mark Andrews, his receiving yards, you can go over there on PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We are back here, our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Friday. My computer kind of fritzed out there for a second, but hopefully everything is back. I think I solved the issue. But appreciate everybody. This is an instant reaction edition of the show, breaking down Justice Hill's 2-year extension with the Ravens, the latest news entering the weekend, plus Ravens and Cowboys, that Week 3 preview. Laura, what's going on? Good afternoon. Hopefully your Friday is going well. Appreciate you. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Laura says it, so that means you have to do it. So we just hit 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. Again, a really big milestone. Next up, 9,000. So be sure if you want 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage plus more to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Plus follow and subscribe in audio form. I love the communities we've built, video form, audio form. social media, even on Twitter. You can follow me at ChaosStriker34. On Instagram, we're building that up as well. Be sure to follow me over on Instagram at ChaosStriker34 as well. So we'll see. Oh, okay, Jeff, with some clarification, by the way, just started off. Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Just check back. The record was in the last 25 years. Still, I mean, not necessarily encouraging. Not encouraging for the Ravens. And Clay here saying, Kevin, your post-game reactions have earned you my respect. I couldn't do it. I was very angry. I don't know how you deal with it and stay professional. Man, well, first of all, Clay, this means a lot to me. Thank you. We do go live after every single Ravens game. Last week was probably the most fired up I've been on a post-game show. If we're being honest, I think a lot of people commented that as well, and they could certainly sense the passion that I had. And look, I'm passionate about this team just like everybody else is. I mean, look, people don't see this. I'll do a little bonus look up there. It doesn't really fit. I don't want to be looking at the camera like this. But look, man, I'm a fan of this team just like you guys are. We got Eric Weddle. Donnell Ellerbe is my favorite Ravens player of all time. And you can't really see the signature, but that's Kamar Aiken up there. So look, man, I feel the emotions just like everybody else feels them, and getting on here, talking about it. It's certainly tough sometimes. I hear you, but I try to provide levity and just perspective for wins and losses, right? Wins and losses. So appreciate this, Clay. This means a lot, and we do go live after every single Ravens game. A little shameless plug on there as well. But let's talk about this Ravens game against Dallas. This is a must-win game, and we're in week 3. And I saw the comment earlier from Dre. Let me see if I can pull it back up here. Here we go. Dre, must win in week 3 sounds disgusting. Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. I mean, this is a situation where we're already talking about it. And we knew that this stretch was going to be tough. We knew the opening season, the opening first 5 weeks for this team, we knew it was going to be tough, right? There's nothing that said that it wasn't. You got Kansas City, that Raiders game, which everybody thought was kind of the easiest game. They dropped that game. Then you have Dallas. Then you have the Bills coming up in prime time. And then it's Cincinnati after that. No rest for this Ravens team. But against Dallas, there are a couple of things that they can do. And let me pull up some of these pregame graphics that I made. Again, we'll be pulling these up throughout the weekend. But here are my keys to this game. We talked about this on today's episode as well. If you haven't checked out that, be sure to go back and look at it. We talked about Todd Monken and his unusual potential offensive line solution. But the first part for the Ravens is good offensive line play. Have to have a good offensive line play up front for them. It's the most important thing, both in the run game and in pass protection. The Ravens offensive line has played a key part in losing the Ravens their 2 games so far. So hopefully we see some level of some changes on that line. Obviously Daniel Falele being the one, and Roger Rosengarten getting that full-time nod. I do expect Roger Rosengarten to play full-time at the tackle position. This is just me, where my final score prediction kind of reflects this here. But I have the Ravens at 27-23 over Dallas, where I think that with better offensive line play, that being Rosengarten full-time, the Ravens will be able to run the ball enough on this Dallas defense, which does not have a great run defense. I think the Ravens will be able to run the ball on Dallas, and that to me will be it. But John Harbaugh, we know that he's not a guy that's necessarily going to telegraph his decisions, right? He wants to keep him close to the vest. And so Harbaugh kind of hinted at, well, yeah, Roger played really well, and we're going to try to work both those guys in. I think that's going to be pretty full-time Roger Rosengarten. That's my prediction, much like my final score there, 27-23. So that's my first key. Second key, commit to the play action. Just do it. The Ravens ran play action on 12.8% of their plays. In week 2, that number has to go up. Has to go up in week 3. It's such a lethal part of their offense, especially if they can get their run game going. Defenses will have to cheat up on that ground game, put more defenders in the box. And that's just going to be, it's going to be key, going to be huge for them. So I think committing to play action, we've seen it work over these first 2 weeks. John Harbaugh has made an emphasis on the fact that they are going to do it more. Hopefully that is him telegraphing it and we'll actually see it. But that's my second key to the game. And then finally, pull it back up. Late game execution. Cannot blow 10-point fourth quarter leads. Cannot be this team that goes out there and, you have everything right in your fingertips and you just let it slip away. You must be able to close that game out. I'm curious to see how the Ravens will defend CeeDee Lamb, and this kind of goes into my players to watch. We brought this up on today's show. I'll pull it up again quickly. Daniel Falele being the first one, Marlon Humphrey at number 2, and then Kyle Hamilton number 3. I expect Humphrey to kind of follow CeeDee Lamb in this game. I don't have Dallas's injury report in front of me, but he was limited on Thursday. But CeeDee Lamb plays out of the slot a lot, so I'd expect Marlon Humphrey to kind of shadow him. Humphrey, we know, can play both on the outside and in the slot, so big game for him. And then Kyle Hamilton has not looked like his Kyle Hamilton self, neither is Roquan Smith, honestly. But Hamilton hopefully getting going. He's been dealing with a couple of those injuries as well. So those are some players that 100% have to step up. And look, Falele is a player to watch just off of let's watch if he's even in the starting lineup or not, right? But that's kind of where we're looking at. And Jeff, yep, Dallas is atrocious against the run. They need to have Henry run more to the outside. The one time they did, he broke out for a long run. Get Derrick Henry a gap on the outside. The thing with Derrick Henry, what makes him so incredible, when you get him moving, when he starts to get ahead of steam, the longer he runs, the harder he is to bring down. And that actually works in multiple different aspects, right? Because when he gets that head of steam, you have this huge mountain of a man running at you. It's going to be tough, especially as you get to that second and third level and the defenders get smaller and smaller. It's going to be tough. Plus, the later you run him in a game, that to me is going to be really, really interesting as well. So Laura saying she has faith to beat the Cowboys this week. Dak ain't all that. Yeah, Colin Cowherd actually had a really long, I think it was 3-4 minutes yesterday on the Herd, talking about how Lamar is this elite quarterback, but gets criticized more than anybody. And Dak Prescott gets kind of, is a BB plus guy, but gets elevated by everybody. So to me, I think that the Ravens can force some turnovers. Look, just, who's going to beat you. It's CeeDee Lamb. Take CeeDee Lamb out of the equation, and you have a formula for a win. They didn't do it with Devontae Adams last week. Devontae Adams still was able to get free and work against this Ravens team. So that to me is where I am with that. Before we head out of here, let's get your final score predictions. I see Zepia here saying Ravens 23, Cowboys 17. So if you're in the chat live, put your final score predictions in the chat. If you're watching this on playback, put your final score predictions in the chat. Really curious to see how people are feeling about the squad this week. Again, I'll pull up mine here again. 27-23 is my final score prediction. So for anybody who has any, if you want to put yours in the chat, I think Baltimore, again, it'll be a closer game, right? I think for the Ravens, they will need to be able to go out there and get the job done, right? You can't give Dallas anything here, but just exploit Dallas's weaknesses. Exploit Dallas's weaknesses. I think that, to me, is the biggest thing. Establish your run game early, work the play action, and I think you have a really, really solid plan for success. And I see exactly Dre saying play action out of the I formation is unstoppable with our backfield, but unfortunately they're not utilizing that formation. Put Patrick Ricard in there. I hear you, Dre. Get Patrick Ricard in there and make these defenses line up in heavy personnel, establish that early, gash them on the ground, and then they have to bring in more heavy personnel, and then you work play action off of it. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, those guys will feast. That'll open up opportunities for Zay and Rashod Bateman too. So that will be a really big key for this team. I see Laura saying 17-10. Hopefully that's Ravens, Laura. Hopefully Ravens win 17-10. Jeff, 31-14. I can tell this is Ravens for Jeff. Your offense finally finds their identity. So, man, really big game, must-win game for the Ravens. And really appreciate everybody for tuning in. Laura, this means a lot to me. Kevin is amazing. NanoRave8, Kevin is awesome. It means the world, all the support that I've gotten here on this show. And speaking of, NanoRave saying 27-24 Ravens. We'll be back here tomorrow. We'll have a bonus episode coming for you. We'll dive more into John Harbaugh's extensive comments hinting at some major changes on that Baltimore Ravens offensive line. We talked about one of those today, but there were plenty of other hints that John Harbaugh gave. So be sure to stay tuned. Tune in tomorrow. Be right back here. Hope everybody has a great start to your weekend, enjoys the rest of your Friday. Be sure to subscribe, follow along video form and audio form, as we have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Appreciate everybody. Stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.